While I was away on a business trip, my daughter-in-law decided to move all my belongings into the garage. Her reason? My parents deserve the best room. I only smiled. She had no idea that I was worth $5 million. By Monday, I handed her a letter that began with, "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end of this story and don't forget to comment the city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches." It was 11:30 p.m. when I finally stood in my own driveway, drained after 3 long days in Chicago negotiating a deal that would add $2 million to my investment firm. Something felt off right away. The porch light was dark, even though I'd told Marcus my flight was delayed. At 62, I'd learned to notice small details. The front door was locked, but of course I had my key. What I didn't expect was a note taped to my bedroom door. "Mom, you'll be in the guest room tonight. Juniper's parents arrived early. Thanks for understanding. Marcus." Understanding? For 2 years they'd been living in my house rent-free. And now I was being reassigned like unwanted furniture. When I opened the guest room, it was empty. Not a single piece of furniture left. That's when Juniper appeared, arms crossed, lips curled into that thin smile she wore when she thought she had the upper hand. "Looking for something?" she asked, her blonde hair perfectly styled, dressed in the silk pajamas I'd bought her last Christmas. "Where are my things, Juniper?" "Oh, those old things?" she said lightly. "I moved them out. My parents are visiting for 2 weeks, and they deserve the best accommodations. Don't worry, I put everything in the garage covered with plastic sheets. Very thoughtful of me, don't you think? My clothes, family photographs, even my mother's jewelry box all stacked in the garage like discarded holiday decorations. Juniper, that's my bedroom," she laughed softly. "Well, technically it's Marcus's room now. We are married. My parents are here to meet their grandson, and they need the quietest, most comfortable space. It's only logical that you take the alternative room." By alternative, she meant the storage loft above the garage, no heating, barely livable. Her tone turned sharp. "Daddy has a bad back and Mommy is sensitive to noise. They need peace and comfort. I'm sure you understand." What she really meant was, "Know your place." I steadied my voice. "And you decided all this without asking me?" She gave a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Mom, you always make such a big deal out of nothing. It's temporary. Besides, you love your independence. I thought you'd enjoy some solitude." Solitude, another word for exile. I walked to the kitchen for a glass of water. The sink was filled with dirty plates, the expensive ones I'd bought for special occasions. Clearly, they'd hosted a welcome dinner without me. Then Juniper appeared again. "Oh, and Mom, could you please keep it quiet in the mornings? My parents are light sleepers, and since your little loft is above Daddy's Mercedes, it would be a shame if they were disturbed." Her parents' luxury car was parked in my driveway right where I usually parked, another reminder that I was being pushed out. "Of course," I whispered. "Wouldn't want to disturb anyone." Her smile widened. "I knew you'd be reasonable, unlike other mothers-in-law who make everything about themselves." I climbed the narrow stairs to the cold garage loft, dragging only the suitcase I'd taken to Chicago. My belongings were stacked like items at a yard sale. I pulled back one plastic sheet and found my mother's hand-sewn quilt, now reeking of motor oil. I sat on the small cot Marcus had placed there, still in my business clothes, and tried to process it all. In just 20 minutes, I had gone from homeowner to unwanted guest in my own house. Then, my phone buzzed. A text from my business partner came through confirmation that the Chicago deal had closed. $5 million in commission. Enough to buy a small hotel. And yet, I was sitting in a freezing garage loft because my daughter-in-law thought I didn't deserve basic respect. The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the lesson. For 2 years, I'd tried to be the kind of mother-in-law I never had, generous, patient, supportive. I'd watched Juniper redecorate every room, install her friends as permanent guests, and slowly edge me out of the center of my own life. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that Marcus was happy, that peace was worth the small sacrifices. But this wasn't small. This was a move on her part, calculated and deliberate. And she'd chosen her moment carefully, while I was away earning the very money that kept this roof over all our heads. As I lay on that hard cot, listening to laughter drifting from my own living room, I made a decision. If Juniper wanted to play games about who belonged where, I was ready to remind her exactly who owned what. The next morning, at 6, the sound of car doors jolted me awake. From the tiny garage window, I watched Marcus leave for work. No glance back, no acknowledgement of where his mother had spent the night. He'd always avoided conflict, but this felt like abandonment. By the time I came downstairs, still in yesterday's clothes because my wardrobe was buried under plastic, Juniper was already in full performance mode, silk robe, humming to herself, preparing a breakfast spread that could have been in a magazine. "Oh, good, you're up," she said lightly, not even turning toward me. "Would you take this tray upstairs to my parents? They enjoy breakfast in bed." The tray was piled high, fruit carved into perfect shapes, eggs sprinkled with herbs from the garden I'd planted, coffee served in the bone china cups that had belonged to my grandmother. "The stairs are steep," I said carefully. "Maybe Marcus could—" "Marcus left early for a meeting," she cut in. "Besides, I'm sure you don't mind helping out family. Hospitality is so important, don't you think?" Her smile was sharp, her eyes daring me to refuse. I carried the heavy tray upstairs, my back protesting with every step. A gruff voice called, "Come in." Juniper's father was sprawled across my pillows, reading his paper as if he owned the place. His wife was at my vanity, applying her makeup in the mirror I'd looked into for 15 years. "About time," he muttered. "We usually eat at 7 sharp." I set the tray down gently. Patricia flicked her hand in my direction, dismissive. "You can pick this up later. We don't like clutter." Not a single glance in my direction. I was invisible. Back downstairs, Juniper lounged with her phone, sipping tea from my favorite mug, the one Marcus had given me for Mother's Day a decade ago. "All settled?" she asked, finally glancing at me. "Good. Oh, I should mention, we're having people over tonight, some of Marcus's colleagues and their wives. Just a small gathering, maybe a dozen. I thought it would be nice to show off the house. Show off my house, to people who had no idea I even existed, let alone that I owned it." "How many?" I asked evenly. "About 12. Nothing too fancy. I've already arranged catering." Then she smiled sweetly. "You don't mind helping serve, do you? It would mean so much to Marcus. Help serve, in my own home, at a party I wasn't invited to." "Of course," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Wonderful," she said. "You're such a team player, Mom." That afternoon, I watched from the garage loft window as trucks arrived. My garden was strung with lights and workers rearranged my furniture to fit Juniper's vision. She had turned my home into a stage, and I was cast as the background help. When evening came, she handed me a black dress, one of mine, pulled from the garage. "Make yourself presentable," she said. The dress still smelled faintly of motor oil, but I put it on. By 7, the party was alive. I carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres through my own living room, invisible to the guests who praised Juniper's exquisite taste. "You have such a lovely house," one woman in pearls gushed. "Did you decorate it yourself?" "Thank you," Juniper beamed. "It took forever to get it just right. Marcus and I have very specific taste. We wanted everything to be perfect." Marcus and I. As if I had never existed. "And this location," the woman continued, "it must have cost a fortune." Juniper smiled again, accepting a glass of wine from the tray I held without so much as a glance. "We were very lucky. Sometimes the best opportunities just fall into your lap. Fall into your lap. Like marrying a man whose mother already owned prime real estate. I kept serving, kept invisible, and kept listening. Juniper had spun an entire story about their success. Their home, their life. In that story, I didn't exist. During a quiet moment, I slipped into the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with crystal glasses worth more than most people's rent. That's when Patricia appeared in the doorway, scanning the room like a guest inspecting a hotel suite. "The service has been adequate," she said coolly. though the help is a bit old. Juniper, dear, perhaps next time consider someone younger, more energetic. The help? Oh, that's just Marcus's mother. Juniper's voice floated in from the living room, casual and dismissive. She likes to feel useful. It gives her purpose. Purpose. According to Juniper, my life's purpose was serving drinks in my own home. By the time the last guest left, it was nearly midnight. My back ached, my feet throbbed, and I reeked of industrial dish soap. That went wonderfully, Juniper purred, slipping off her heels. Everyone was so impressed. Marcus made excellent connections tonight. She stretched like a satisfied cat before turning to me with a bright smile. Be a dear and finish cleaning up, would you? My parents have an early flight tomorrow, and I want everything perfect for their last morning, you understand? Oh, I understood. Perfectly. I understood I'd been manipulated, erased, and reduced to background labor in my own life, and I understood something else. It was time to stop playing the part she'd written for me. At 1 a.m, wiping down my own counters after a party thrown in my house, I made a second decision in 2 days. Tomorrow, I would start making calls. It was time to remind everyone exactly who owned what and who had been receiving charity, not giving it. The performance was over. The real show was about to begin. The weekend brought fresh humiliation. Saturday morning, I found a handwritten list slipped under my garage door. Juniper's flawless cursive spelled out my responsibilities: laundry, grocery shopping, meal prep, property maintenance, which apparently meant washing both cars and pulling weeds. At the bottom, she'd added a cheery note. Thanks for being such a sport about everything. You're the best, Jay. I folded the paper neatly and tucked it into my purse with the previous night's schedule. Evidence, documentation, a record of every calculated insult. By noon, halfway through the list, I heard her voice calling across the yard. Juniper was on my back patio with 2 neighbors I'd known for years, Joan and Mrs. Henderson. Oh, there she is, Juniper said, waving at me like I was a child. Marcus's mother is such a help around the house. We're so grateful she's found something to keep her busy in retirement. Joan frowned. But isn't this your... She just loves feeling needed, Juniper interrupted smoothly. It's so sweet how some older people find purpose in helping family. We can hardly stop her. I was kneeling in my garden, dirt under my fingernails, while my daughter-in-law presented me as some fragile dependent, a woman doing chores to feel relevant. Oh, she certainly keeps things beautiful, Mrs. Henderson offered kindly. The gardens never looked better. Yes, Juniper smiled. She has such a green thumb. Though between you and me, she can be. Set in her ways. You know how it is with older generations. Set in her ways. A polite way of saying stubborn. A code word for burden. That evening, the charade continued at dinner. Juniper's parents sat at my table again, this time with Marcus finally present. I watched the son I'd raised alone, the boy I'd worked 2 jobs to send through college, sit there eating the pot roast I had cooked without meeting my eyes once. Bula makes wonderful pot roast, Patricia announced, as if I weren't standing right there. Very traditional, old-fashioned recipes, Juniper added smoothly. From her generation, you know. They really knew how to make do with simple ingredients. Make do. As if my carefully perfected meals were just relics of a poor past. Mom's always been a good cook, Marcus said quietly. It was the first acknowledgement of me since I'd come back from Chicago. A crumb tossed my way like I was some stray. We're so appreciative, Raymond added, cutting another slice of meat. It must be nice for her to feel useful at this stage of life. This stage of life. At 62, I had apparently entered the twilight stage of life where cooking and cleaning for others was supposed to feel like a privilege. After dinner, as I loaded the dishwasher yet again, I overheard Juniper's voice from the living room. She was on the phone, her tone bright, practiced. "Oh, it's going wonderfully," she said. "Better than I expected, actually. She's been so cooperative about the new arrangements. I think she finally understands Marcus, and I need our space to build our life together." Silence. Then she laughed softly. No problems at all. She's been helpful. Really. I think having clear expectations has been good for everyone. Some people just need structure. Another pause. Marcus? He's relieved. He was worried about hurting her feelings, but now he sees how much happier everyone is when we all know our roles. It's the best solution for everyone involved. Our roles. My role, apparently, was to be grateful for the privilege of maintaining the home I owned while pretending it belonged to someone else. That night, lying on the narrow cot in the cold garage loft, I called my attorney, David Morrison. We'd worked together for over 20 years. It was nearly midnight, but David always answered for long-standing clients. "Bula, everything all right?" "David, I need to ask you something. Confidential. If someone is living in my house and claiming it as their own, what are my legal options? Are we talking about squatters? A break-in?" "Family members," I said evenly, "ones who seem to have forgotten who holds the deed." I told him everything: the garage exile, the servant treatment, the humiliation dressed up as gratitude. He listened, scribbling notes. "Bula, the property is in your name alone, correct?" "Yes, I bought it outright in 2008. My son and daughter-in-law were supposed to be here temporarily, to save for their own place. How long has that been? 2 years?" David was quiet for a moment. "Do you want them gone?" I stared up at the cracked ceiling, listening to laughter echoing from my own living room. "I want respect, David. And if that's not possible, then yes, I want them gone. I'll draft some documents, nothing hostile, just a formal reminder of ownership and guest status. Sometimes people need official letterhead to remember basic courtesy." When we hung up, I opened my laptop. If Juniper wanted to document my supposed shortcomings, I could build a record of my own. I started with photographs: the garage loft where I was sleeping, the stacks of my belongings under plastic like items in a storage unit, screenshots of my bank statements showing every mortgage payment I'd made over the last 15 years. Then I photographed Juniper's handwritten list of chores. I recorded voice memos during my walks capturing fresh details, every insult, every dismissive comment. By Sunday night, I had built a thorough archive evidence of a systematic campaign to erase me from my own home while exploiting my labor and resources. And then came Sunday dinner. Juniper had invited Marcus's colleague Paul and his wife Sandra, claiming it was a continuation of Friday's networking. Once again, I was relegated to kitchen staff. "This is such a lovely home," Sandra gushed as I served coffee. "You're so lucky to have found something this perfect." "We really are," Juniper said smoothly. "The neighborhood is established, the garden is beautiful, and the house has so much character. It took us forever to find exactly what we wanted. Us. We." The pronouns cut me out entirely. Sandra smiled. "The previous owners must have taken excellent care of it." Juniper laughed lightly. "Oh, there was only one previous owner, an elderly woman who lived here for decades. She kept everything very traditional. We've been updating gradually, putting our own stamp on it." An elderly woman. Spoken of in the past tense, as though I had died or moved away. In Juniper's carefully rewritten reality, I wasn't in the next room serving coffee. I was a forgotten chapter in someone else's story. "It must have been expensive in this market," Paul remarked. "Well," Marcus finally spoke, his first words all evening, "we were very fortunate with the circumstances. Sometimes opportunities just present themselves." Opportunities. That's what I was. An opportunity that had presented itself. As I cleared dessert plates and listened to Juniper narrate renovation plans to my guests, I made a final decision. Monday would change everything. I spent Sunday night assembling a neat folder, photographs, recordings, bank records, and a precise timeline of every insult, slight, and erosion of my place since I returned from Chicago. If this became a legal matter, I would be ready. More important, I would be steady. The hurt had sharpened into something useful. After 62 years of being reasonable and accommodating, of teaching my son that kindness meant tolerating anything, I was done letting generosity be mistaken for weakness. It was time to teach different lessons, to show that generosity carried consequences when abused. Documentation complete, the education phase would begin on Monday. Morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood. I'd hardly slept, the house settling above me like a reminder that I didn't belong. By 7, I was dressed and sitting in my car, watching Marcus leave for work without even glancing at the garage. David's office filled the top floor of a downtown building that had housed high-profile attorneys for decades. I'd signed wills and investment papers here. Never a notice like this. David greeted me with the steady calm of someone used to delicate family matters. He handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside were 3 documents: a formal declaration of ownership, a 30-day notice to vacate, and a clarification of living arrangements, offering them the option to stay as tenants under a formal lease and market rent. The first lays out the facts, he explained: ownership, mortgage history, legal residence. The second gives them 30 days. The third lets them pay fair market rent and formalize the arrangement. How much rent? I asked. About $4,000 a month fair market for this street. David slid comparable listings across his desk. $4,000 a month. More than Marcus's take-home, more than they'd saved in 2 years. If they refused both options, they would be trespassers and we'd proceed accordingly. He hesitated, then asked the question no one wants to ask. Are you sure this is how you want to handle it? Family disputes get ugly, Beulah. It's already ugly, I said. I'm only making it official. He pulled another file from his drawer. One more thing, I did some background on your daughter-in-law. Public records, credit history, employment verification. I thought you should see it. Her record was a patchwork. Sporadic, short-term jobs, long gaps, 2 bankruptcies, the most recent 3 years ago, right before she married Marcus, debts quietly paid by unknown sources. As I read, the pattern snapped into place. Juniper hadn't stumbled into my son's life by accident. She'd found a solution to her financial problems, a husband with a steady income and a mother with valuable property. Does Marcus know? I asked. That's between them, David answered, measured. But given her history and the 2 years of no steady employment while living here, it's worth addressing. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat, heavy yet oddly freeing. For the first time since Friday, I felt options opening. The house was quiet. Juniper's car was gone, yoga, lunch with friends, free afternoons funded by 0 rent. I climbed the narrow stairs to the garage loft and sat on the cot, the papers in my lap. I could deliver the documents now and force the confrontation, or I could wait and watch her sink further into the role she'd invented. Let her grow more comfortable. Let her dig the hole deeper. Either way, tomorrow the lesson would begin. The decision was made for me when I heard her car in the driveway at noon. From the garage window, I watched her step out with shopping bags from high-end boutiques, humming as she strolled toward the house. She moved with the carefree confidence of someone whose biggest worry was which cafe to try for lunch. I gave her an hour. Then I knocked on my own front door. She opened it with a faint frown. Oh, hi. Is everything okay? You look serious. We need to talk, Juniper. Of course. Come in, she said smoothly, gesturing like a hostess welcoming a guest. Can I get you something? Tea? Coffee? No, this won't take long. We sat in the living room. She curled in my favorite chair as though it had always been hers. I stayed standing, the envelope in my hand. Juniper, I need to clarify some things about this house. Her smile wavered. Clarify? Yes. I think there's been some confusion about our living arrangements, about who owns what and who is responsible for what. Her hands stilled on the pillow she was fussing with. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. This is a copy of the property deed. My name is the only one on it. I am the sole owner of this house. Her eyes darted over the page, and the color drained from her face. I've paid every mortgage, every tax bill, every insurance premium and repair for the last 15 years. You and Marcus have been living here as my guests. I slid out the second document. This is a 30-day notice to vacate. You have until the end of this month to find another place to live. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "I'm completely serious. However—" I held up the third document. "I'm not unreasonable. If you prefer to stay, I'm prepared to offer you a standard lease agreement, $4,000 a month plus utilities, fair market value." Her head jerked up, panic replacing her usual smugness. We can't afford that." "Then you'd better start looking for somewhere you can." "But this is our home. Marcus grew up here. We've been here 2 years." "As my guests," I corrected, my voice steady. "Guests who have apparently forgotten their manners." She shot to her feet, scattering papers across the rug. "You can't do this. Marcus won't let you. Marcus is 35 years old. He doesn't get to let me do anything with my own property." Her voice rose, shrill now. "This is about the bedroom, isn't it? About my parents visiting. You're throwing us out because I hurt your feelings." I didn't flinch. "No, I'm setting boundaries because you've forgotten this is my house, not yours. I am not your staff, and respect in this home is not negotiable." "I never said you were." I pulled out my phone and tapped a recording. Her voice filled the room. "Oh, that's just Marcus's mother. She likes to feel useful. It gives her purpose, you know." Juniper went pale. You recorded me?" "I documented what was happening in my own home, which, as you now understand, is entirely legal since I own it." She slumped back into the chair, face crumpling. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem. You're both adults. 2 years of rent-free living should have given you plenty of savings." Her lips trembled. "We don't have savings. We put money into the house, into improvements, into what, exactly?" My voice cut like glass. "Show me one improvement you paid for. You can't because there aren't any." "Every upgrade, every repair, every single improvement came from me." I leaned forward, calm but firm. "Juniper, I spent my entire life working for this home, saving, investing, sacrificing. I was generous with you because I wanted Marcus to be happy. But generosity is not weakness." I gathered the papers and placed them neatly on the coffee table. "You have 30 days. Use them wisely." As I walked to the door, her voice followed, cracking with desperation. "What am I supposed to tell Marcus?" I turned back, meeting her eyes. The woman who had tried to erase me now sat deflated, panic etched across her face. "Tell him the truth, Juniper. Tell him actions have consequences. Tell him his mother is not as helpless as you led him to believe." And with that, I walked out my own front door, this time not as an unwelcome guest, but as the rightful owner. The phone calls, the accusations, the tears, they would come. But for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The performance was over. The real accounting was just beginning. Marcus's car screeched into the driveway at 3:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been waiting, watching from the garage window, anticipating the explosion. The front door slammed so hard I felt it in the floorboards. Raised voices followed, his baritone clashing with Juniper's sharp protests. I couldn't catch the words, but I didn't need to. Panic, anger, desperation. 20 minutes later, Marcus appeared at the garage apartment door. His tie was askew, his face flushed, his eyes wild, the look of a man whose entire world had just tilted sideways. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" I gestured to the single chair in the room. "Sit down, Marcus. We need to talk." "I'm not sitting. Juniper said you're trying to evict us. She said you served us with legal papers." "I delivered documents clarifying our living arrangement," I said evenly. "This is our home." "No," I corrected, steady but firm. "This is my home. You and Juniper have been living here as my guests." He started pacing the narrow space, hands tugging through his hair like he had as a child when overwhelmed. "But we've been here 2 years. We've been taking care of things, maintaining the property." "Really?" I asked calmly. "Marcus, when was the last time you paid a bill here? Mortgage, taxes, utilities?" He froze, his mouth opening, then closing without sound. "I've been supporting both of you for 2 years while you were supposed to be saving for your own place, a place you clearly never intended to buy. That's not— We were planning—" His words trailed into silence. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Do you want to see the statements? 2 years of mortgage payments, insurance, repairs, utilities, every penny from my accounts. He stared at the screen, the numbers undeniable. I checked your joint balance this morning, I continued. After 2 years of rent-free living, you and Juniper have saved exactly $1,200. Where did it all go? His shoulders sagged. Juniper likes nice things. She says we need to maintain a certain lifestyle. For my career. Her career? My voice was ice. Marcus, when was the last time Juniper worked? She's been looking. The market's tough for someone with her background. I reached for the folder David had prepared. You mean her background of 2 bankruptcies and a credit score under 500? The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? You didn't know? My tone was flat. Marcus, did you even check before you married her? Did you ever talk about money? He swallowed. She said it wasn't romantic to talk about money. Not romantic, I repeated, the words bitter on my tongue. My brilliant son, who could dissect market trends, never thought to ask the most basic questions before legally tying himself to someone drowning in debt. Finally, he sank into the chair. I handed him Juniper's employment and credit history. She's never held a job longer than 8 months. She defaulted on credit cards, student loans, car payments, and rent. Declared bankruptcy in 2018 and again in 2021, 6 months before she married you. His hands shook as he turned the pages. This can't be right. It's all public record, Marcus. She didn't marry you for love. She married you because she needed stability. And she saw me as part of the package: a roof, a house, a safety net. He shook his head. You don't know that. Don't I? When was the last time she contributed financially? When was the last time she respected me in my own home? The question hung between us. Marcus had witnessed her dismissive remarks, her condescending tone, her systematic erasure of my presence. He'd said nothing, done nothing, always choosing her comfort over my dignity. She's been good to you, he tried weakly. Good to me? My voice sharpened. Marcus, 3 days ago, she moved my belongings to the garage and gave my bedroom to her parents. She's had me serving meals and cleaning like hired help. She's been telling neighbors I'm a charity case who lives here because I need care. His head snapped up. She didn't say that. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of her voice in the garden with Joan and Mrs. Henderson. She just loves feeling needed. It's so sweet how some older people find purpose in helping family. Marcus listened, his face crumpling. Disbelief gave way to recognition, and then finally, shame. She introduced me to your colleagues as the help, I said quietly. She told them I was the previous owner, past tense. Marcus, she's been erasing me from my own life while taking credit for everything I've built. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't want to know, I replied. It was easier to let her handle things, to avoid conflict, to pretend your mother's feelings didn't matter as long as your wife was happy. Tears rolled down his cheeks. At 35, my son looked like the lost little boy he'd been when his father left us 27 years ago. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough anymore, Marcus. I've spent 2 years watching you choose her over me, over basic decency, over truth. I've watched you stand by while she humiliated me in my own home. He swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? I want you to grow up. I want you to take responsibility for your choices. I want you to decide what kind of man you're going to be. He wiped his eyes. The 30-day notice. Is that real? Completely real. You and Juniper need to find somewhere else to live. But we can't afford rent anywhere decent on just my salary. Then Juniper needs to get a job, a real job, not something she'll quit when it's inconvenient. She won't like that. Marcus, listen to yourself. You're a grown man worrying about whether your wife will like contributing to her own household. What exactly does she bring to this marriage besides expensive tastes and bad debt? He couldn't answer, and that was answer enough. There's something else you need to know. I pulled out the final document from David's folder. I've been updating my will. As it stands now, everything goes to charity. You're no longer my heir." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Mom, no, please. I'm not doing this to punish you.
What, Marcus?
I'm doing it to protect what I've built from someone who's shown she'll destroy anything she can't control. If you leave her, we'll revisit the situation, but do it because it's right, not because of my money." He sat in silence for several minutes, staring at the papers scattered between us. Outside, I could hear Juniper's voice on the phone, probably spinning some story that made her the victim. "She's going to fight this," he said finally. "I'm counting on it," I said, "because when she does, she'll show you exactly who she really is." "And if I choose her?" he asked, meeting my eyes. The man I had raised, supported, sacrificed everything for. "Then you'll have chosen someone who sees me as an obstacle, not a person, and I'll know I failed to teach you the difference." Marcus left without another word. Through my window, I watched him walk back to the house with the slow, heavy steps of someone carrying an unbearable weight. The front door opened and closed softly. This time, the real fight was just beginning. But for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't pretending love meant accepting abuse. I was standing up for myself, and it felt like coming back to life. The evening would bring more tears, more accusations, more desperate attempts to make me the villain. But I was done being anyone's victim. I was done being invisible in my own home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I was exactly where I belonged, in control of my own destiny. 6 months later, I stood in my own kitchen making coffee at 7 a.m., wearing my bathrobe and slippers, listening to the blessed sound of silence. No demanding voices, no passive-aggressive sighs, no footsteps overhead reminding me I was unwelcome. The transformation had taken exactly 28 days. Marcus and Juniper had fought the eviction, of course. Juniper tried tears first, then threats, then a desperate smear campaign to turn Marcus's colleagues against me, painting herself as a victim of elder abuse. She even called Adult Protective Services, claiming I was mentally incompetent and being manipulated by my attorney. That backfired spectacularly when the caseworker discovered the concerned daughter-in-law had been living rent-free in my house while isolating me from my own friends. The breaking point came on day 15. I returned from lunch with my neighbor Joan, a friendship Juniper had almost destroyed with her lies, to find Juniper in my bedroom photographing my jewelry and valuables. She claimed she was documenting things for insurance purposes, but we both knew she was cataloging assets she'd expected to inherit. "Insurance purposes?" I'd asked, standing in the doorway, watching her rifle through my mother's jewelry box. "Well, you know, at your age, it's important to keep track of valuable items for security reasons," she'd said lightly. At my age, as if being 62 made me incompetent to manage my own possessions. That night I changed every lock in the house. Marcus had to choose, move out with his wife or sleep on the street. To his credit, he chose correctly, though it took him another week to follow through with filing for divorce. The proceedings were swift and brutal. Faced with David's meticulous documentation, her financial history, the recordings, her attempts at manipulation, Juniper's attorney advised her to settle. She walked away with half of Marcus's modest savings and nothing else. No alimony, no claim to property she had never owned, no continued access to the family she had tried so hard to exploit. Marcus moved into a small apartment across town. We've had dinner twice since then. Awkward, careful conversations. He apologized again and again, while I cautiously began the long work of forgiveness. "I thought if I just went along with whatever she wanted, things would work out," he told me at our last dinner. "I thought keeping the peace was the same as keeping love." "Peace built on someone else's suffering isn't peace, Marcus," I said. "It's surrender." And for the first time, I saw real understanding in his eyes. 6 months later, I stood in my own kitchen at 7 a.m., wearing my bathrobe and slippers, listening to the sound of silence. No footsteps overhead, No sharp sighs, no passive-aggressive requests, just quiet. The house felt lighter, as if clearing out Juniper's toxic presence had physically changed the air. I had repainted the master bedroom in warm blues and greens, colors that reminded me of calm mornings by the lake. Marcus's old room was now a proper home office with a view of the garden I was restoring. My phone rang. Joan, my neighbor. "Good morning, neighbor. Lunch today?" "Absolutely," I said. "Margaret wants to apologize for believing those ridiculous stories Juniper told about you being difficult." I smiled. "Tell her not to worry. We all want to believe the best in people, even when they don't deserve it." After hanging up, I walked slowly through the house, room by room, reclaiming the spaces where I had once felt invisible. The living room where I'd been reduced to serving strangers. The kitchen where I'd cooked elaborate meals for people who dismissed me as the help. The bedroom I'd been exiled from in favor of more important guests. All of it was mine again. All of it was clean. My phone buzzed again, this time from my investment advisor. Q3 portfolio shows 12% growth. Lunch next week to discuss charitable giving. Charitable giving. I let the irony sink in. For 2 years, I'd been giving charity to people who claimed to love me while quietly dismantling my dignity. Now I was ready to give to causes that truly deserved it. My first donation had gone to a local organization that helped women escape financially abusive relationships. The counselor told me how common my story really was. Successful women exploited by their own family members, their generosity twisted into chains. "The hardest part," she'd said, "is remembering that love shouldn't hurt, that being family doesn't give anyone the right to diminish you." I was already planning more. A scholarship fund for non-traditional students, support for seniors at risk of financial exploitation. Turning my own painful experience into protection for others felt like the only fitting ending. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a delivery truck and a young woman with a clipboard. "Beulah Morrison? Delivery for you." Inside the heavy box was a breathtaking arrangement of orchids and a handwritten note. "Dear Mrs. Morrison, thank you for your donation to our women's shelter. Your generosity will help 12 women and their children transition to safe, independent living. Your story inspired our entire staff." I set the note on the counter and looked around my kitchen. My kitchen. At 62, I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. It is never too late to reclaim your power. With gratitude, Sarah Chen, Executive Director. I set the orchids on my dining room table, their rich purple blooms glowing in the late afternoon sun streaming through windows that were, at last, entirely mine. That evening, I sat on my back patio with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My garden was thriving again, flowers blooming freely now that the shadow of resentment was gone. My phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Probably Juniper, trying one last manipulation, one more desperate attempt to rewrite history. I deleted the voicemails without listening. That chapter was closed. Instead, I opened my laptop and began an email to David. I'd like to schedule a meeting to update my will. Please restore Marcus as my beneficiary with conditions. I want the inheritance held in trust until he maintains steady employment and completes financial counseling. I also want to move forward with establishing the charitable foundation we discussed. I hit send and closed the laptop, feeling lighter than I had in years. At 62, I wasn't winding down. I was redesigning. I wasn't a victim of family exploitation. I was a survivor who had found her voice again. The evening air carried the scent of jasmine from my garden, no longer drowned out by the smell of conflict. Tomorrow, I would have lunch with real friends. I'd work in my garden, read in my favorite chair, make decisions based on my values, not anyone else's manipulation. I'd learned the most important lesson of my life at an age when most people think the learning is over, that love without respect is not love at all, and family who exploit your generosity while tearing down your dignity are not acting like family. The stars appeared one by one, reminders that even in darkness, light endures. Even after the cruelest betrayals, there is possibility. I was 62, financially secure, emotionally free, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I was relearning how to garden, how to read for pleasure, how to live without apologizing for existing in my own home. My phone rang again, this time. Marcus. Hi, Mom. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. Proud that you stood up for yourself. Proud you didn't let us destroy who you are. I'm sorry it took me so long to see the truth. Tears pricked my eyes, but these were good tears. Healing tears. Thank you, Marcus. That means everything. I love you, Mom. The real you, not the version Juniper wanted you to be. I love you too, son. After hanging up, I sat in the quiet of my backyard, listening to the soft sound of wind chimes I'd hung without asking anyone's permission. This was what freedom sounded like. This was what self-respect felt like. At 62, I was finally home,